And I'll reconvene the regular council meeting for Monday, September 9th, 2024. I'd just like to acknowledge the members of the gallery that are here tonight and anybody who may be viewing remotely. We have Councillor Ray, I believe, is with us tonight, and she's connecting to this meeting remotely as well. Make sure we got her up there before we start. She's there? Yep. Welcome. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, September 9th, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of Monday, July 29th, 2024, minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, July 29th, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Blissett. Those in discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move into bylaws here. The bylaws for consideration tonight are official community plan amendment bylaw number 4165 2024 and zoning bylaw amendment number 4166 2024. These bylaws are at council tonight for consideration of first and second reading and moving to public hearing. Can I please have staff provide a report of the overview of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Price. I can provide an overview. First off, it's been a little while since I've been here, so it's nice to see everybody again. Mayor and Council, so we are looking, as Mayor Price pointed out, at bylaw number 4165, which is an amendment to the future land use map in the OCP, as well as bylaw 4166, which is looking at the zoning map. We met at the end of July 29th, to give first reading to the OCP. As we get started here, I'll just say that staff are recommending against giving both the second reading and the first reading to the OCP amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. I'll provide some background into that in just a moment. The alternative will be to give second reading to the OCP and first reading to the zoning bylaw, first and second reading to the zoning bylaw, and submit them to the Advisory Planning Commission, as well as to a public hearing. Now, I'll point out what we are looking at is the future land use map would need to be, this would be a partial rezoning and partial redesignation of about a third of the land held at the noted property, which is addressed at 2340 34th Avenue North, just to the east of the existing Rocky Pine RV Park. Now, the OCP redesignation would be moving from residentially designated land to tourist recreation. And the rezoning would be that same portion of that land moving from residential R1 to tourist commercial, which would be C6. Now, the intention of the applicant is to set up an RV park, which would actually be somewhat of an addition to the existing Rocky Pine RV parks. He's provided some of his supporting comments here. I'll just read some of them. So due to current local and federal housing costs and shortages, the RV park expansion will provide affordable lodging for its residents. The ability to provide long and short-term lodging availability in a flexible manner as required, and RV infrastructure is a financially feasible option for the terrain, as well as the proposed use of only a portion of the land leaves room for future development, as well, with no permanent structures being built. It will be able to keep the potential for the property fluid, allowing it to be developed as Cranbrook's needs arise. So it is good that he's only doing a portion of the lot and keeping some of the land residential. Staff does not see an RV park to be the same as a principally residential land use. We see it as a commercial land use, and currently some of the comments we've put into here are bolded just at the front. So RV campgrounds are generally not considered a suitable safe housing option. So seasonality is considered in that, as well as the building code. There are ways for passing through building permits. RVs on an RV campground. RV campgrounds have not been identified as a housing solution by the mayor's housing task force, nor the housing strategy or any emerging best practices throughout the province. We've also seen a number of challenges that other municipalities have had with tenancy at long-term tenancy at these RV parks. These RV campgrounds will generate minimal tax revenue, and as well as DCC funding for the infrastructure, as the infrastructure will be used in the same way at a higher intensity of use, sort of a residential intensity, but it wouldn't be taxed in the same way. And it's not what the city is striving for in terms of sustainable development policies for residential land use. So I will leave it at that. I'll add, though, staff doesn't have anything against the applicant's ability to run a clean RV park. They've shown and continue to show that they can run a clean and well-maintained RV park. It's just from a land use perspective that we are being told by the province we need to have a certain amount of land set aside for, as we grow, we need to be able to meet the demand and have the capacity to provide new housing to increase the supply to bring down some of those prices. But if we rezone some of that land to C6 and it becomes an RV park, well, we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit with taking land out of that residential inventory. We may not have the capacity in the future to grow sustainably.
Thank you very much. I'll read the motion and we'll have some discussion on this. Can I get a motion that council not give second reading to the City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4165 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Councillor Graham, Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think a lot of the discussion that we had when this came up last meeting, when we defeated this motion and approved it going forward with the OCP amendment on first reading, still stands the same today. We have somebody who has a good track record. We have somebody who is turning away potential business and has the ability to use a piece of land that is very expensive to service at this point. And moving ahead with something like this doesn't preclude that from happening down the road, but it definitely meets an immediate need that we see in the community now for people, whether it's seasonal workers or others that do utilize their RVs for longer term residency. I think the other thing we have to be aware of is that we have lots of zoned land. We have lots of single family lots. We have lots of land zone between here and Shadow Mountain. So it's by no means are we taking away the last of the last. And we have lots of land zone that nothing happens on. So I think moving ahead with this makes sense, and it's similar to the discussions we had when it came forward last council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. I've got Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So first I have a question. The existing RV park, and then we're talking about building up and further something similar. It's on steep terrain. I took a drive through there, and my question is, if there was a 911, the top of the current RV park, a fire response, especially in the winter, are we able to provide fire response, emergency response to that RV park at the top end right now?
Councillor Popoff through Mayor Price, that is definitely a concern. If this was to go forward, there would be a number of items upon development permit that they would have to address. One of them being the steep slopes development permit. They would have to consult with a geotechnical engineer. That's more in terms of the stability of the slope. In terms of access to the site for emergency, they are able to meet on the one side. There's a sliver of land. If you look at the map, if it's in here, there's a sliver of land to the north side of the property that would be just abutting where the community forest would be. That would probably serve as the legal access to the property. And it, as far as we've seen it is wide enough to just fit what we have laid out for access for a fire truck. There would be one access there and then their access through the park.
So we will be requiring by a city and other regulatory matters that emergency servicing fire trucks in the middle of winter will be able to access the roads and all the different residents that will be living there in RVs. That will be required.
Yes, it would be required. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Mayor, I think staff did another good job with their rationale for why we should not consider this application. I don't need to repeat all those reasons. I think we have a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood right next to this proposed area that is well served as a neighborhood. And again, more housing right along it would be a better fit than another RV park there. When we talk RV park, we're not talking about in for 7 days. We're talking about another form of permanent housing. So I don't know why we're calling it RV park. It's another permanent housing that's not necessarily the housing that we have in our official community plans and zonings and bylaws and everything. We're losing housing mix up there if we do this. And also very limited property tax revenue if it's an RV versus a permanent structure housing. So those and all the other reasons staff have also recommended for turning this down, I support. So I'll be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Ray.
Yeah, thank you. And it's another somewhat difficult decision, and that we do need housing in Cranbrook. But I'm curious, since many of the units up there are permanent, is that actually permitted in an RV campground to be there year round and year after year?
So that's up to the municipality as the province has laid out. They allow the municipality to make that decision. Currently, we don't have any regulations around how long people can use them. I believe in our zoning bylaw, we just have general development standards around how big the roads have to be and general lot size, minimum lot sizes. But there's nothing stipulating a time frame on it. The province has also passed down, they've made it a little bit more difficult if someone is living there long term, to the Tenancy Act will protect them from being evicted without proper cause. So, but no, currently there's nothing preventing that.
Subsequent, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So I had a call from a resident of Panorama today to talk about the proposed zoning change. And of course, we already have potentially going to be altering the OCP in terms of the 400 unit development up there on the side of the hill. And I guess the question that he proposed is, kind of when is an OCP an OCP? And when do you stick with the OCP? And I know council can change zoning whenever we like. But in this case, you kind of put it forward as it's a double hit to the residents of Panorama, because this will expand the RV park in their direction. And so I'm going to support the motion that's presented tonight. I think staff have given a good rationale, but for me, that question about, when should there be some certainty in your neighborhood when an OCP RFP says there's something that's going to happen or not happen in the long term. I really think we need to be looking at that in Cranbrook.
Thank you. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor Price. Once again, as others have stated, thank you very much to staff for this thorough report. I think it's important when we have initiatives such as the Mayor's Housing Task Force and our city housing strategy, and when we look at best practices around the province, I think it's important that we give those findings and all the knowledge that has gone into those reports and those initiatives, that we give those weight, and that we, as much as possible, be guided by that knowledge and those best practices. And so, because this was put forward, part of the rationale was that this was affordable housing. That's just not supported by the initiatives we've had in the city, as well as the best practices we see around the province. So, and in addition, as noted in the staff report, that there's, in outlying areas would be more appropriate locations to consider additional campgrounds, which are really different and separate from affordable housing. So I look forward to supporting the motion as presented.
Thank you. Okay. I've got a couple of comments, I guess, on this. Thank you to staff for the report. Certainly, it does make sense in some context, but I think right now, certainly talking to the applicant, it's my understanding that the previous landowner in 2015 and 2016 had intentions of putting a mobile home park into that area. And the cost of servicing in 2015 and 2016 was cost prohibitive. The current applicant has looked at costs, and we can only appreciate what the costs are that we know just in the city, what infrastructure, roadways and whatnot is probably going to be double that what it was in 2016. So if it wasn't feasible in 2015, 2016, it's not feasible today. He was looking at a trailer park. It's just not practical right now. The day may come where it is practical, and the values and whatnot, and as things change in the community. I will say that right now he has a 36. And they're year-round rentals now. So he started as an RV park, and that is 36 sites. Those 36 sites now are permanent. All those people, pretty well all of them are working. They're working in our community. They have no other option because they can't afford, and we talk about this, affordable housing and various options of what we can do as a community. I don't know what the other options are for these people. They're going to be forced to leave and try and go somewhere else. It was really interesting. It wasn't too long ago. I see they were going to do an upgrade on Highway 1, some road work on Highway 1, and a number of pullouts down in the Fraser Valley were full of RVs. They were camped there. They were permanent sites because they couldn't find a place. Those people worked every day, and they were forced to, basically live on pullouts on Highway 1. So, we have 36 residents that are living like this now. His intention is not to have a bunch of RV trailers in there. I believe what his intention was to look at park models. Park models are better suited, obviously, for year-round. You've got better insulation. You've got a higher level of your heating appliances and whatnot. All your appliances, etc. And it's my understanding that park models are deemed to be RVs. So that's how he had to apply as an RV for park models. But I think his intention was to put park models into these areas. Now, he called me the other day and just mentioned that, in addition to the year-round 36 that he's got there, he has a 20 to 22 name waiting list for people wanting to move in there full-time. But he's also got a number of seniors are starting to approach him about park models. They can't afford to pay the rent. The rents are going up. So they say, well, at least they could probably get in with a park model. They can't afford to maintain their homes anymore. A park model would be affordable. These are senior citizens in our community. I don't know what the option is. You know, if we say no to this, you gotta look, this is the bottom end of the housing. This is survival to me. These people are trying to survive and not be a burden on the community. Certainly, I know that the owner of he owns the RV campsite next door. He's got a reputation for being a no-nonsense operator. So, you know, I totally get what staff's saying. I got to look and I look around the province, I look at issues. This isn't a best practice or an engineered practice as a solution. But certainly, if you talk to those people, those 36 people, and those 22 that are on the waiting list, and, you know, seniors are looking at maybe having to be forced out of their rental or whatever they are, this is a viable, and I think that, you know, a doable solution. And my concern is we say no to this, we're contributing to our homeless population in Cranbrook. And I really don't, and I get what staff is saying, you know, and the OCP moving forward. There will come a time, if we're ready, that land will be developed when the values are all there. So, you know, I cannot vote in favor of the no part of this report.
What I was wondering about, sometimes I read about tiny home developments. Would that be an option in this area? In lieu of, you know, as an alternative?
Councillor Blissett through the mayor. That's, it is dependent. It's based on, you know, when we're talking about some of the principles that we provided here, that the tiny homes, if they are considered homes, if it is a building permit, if it does, if it is a constructed improvement, then we do address a lot of those concerns that staff have provided here. You know, similarly, when you know, discussing the difference between mobile homes and RV parks, you know, RVs do need water and sewer servicing. We do require that within our bylaw. A mobile home does require water and sewer servicing. So yes, we haven't directly addressed the tiny homes aspect of things, you know, through anything that we have within our OCP or within our proposed zoning bylaw. But that could be, you know, that could be a potential solution, you know, to go back at the drawing table and look at what regulations, you know, could be put to bear from that perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Statsky?
So an interesting concept. So I guess the difference between a permanent park model home situation, which we have a number of around Cranbrook, and an RV park would be you have to provide sewer and water hooked up potentially to the city if you're going with more of what one would call a trailer or a mobile home park. Is that correct? The rules would be different?
I believe for the RV park, so I think for a mobile home park, so sorry if this is different here, but I think for the mobile home park, the zoning bylaw considers only manufactured homes to go into mobile home parks, which are a CSA standard, which would be A277. And then for park models, I think those are CSA Z241, which are allowed in recreational vehicle parks, campgrounds. The CSA's Z240 standard are also allowed in the recreational vehicle campground, which are just standard, like a Volkswagen Vanagon or something as this CSA Z240. Sorry, Councillor Stetsky, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering in terms of what the difference in requirements would be for a mobile home park in this location, which is permanent housing for people versus an RV park. And I'm assuming in an RV park, you have to provide individuals sewer, water, and electrical hookups. And I'm assuming with a mobile home park, you have to put in permanent infrastructure. Would that be the difference? Just in case the proposal came back to do that, if this one doesn't go forward, because we do need housing.
Yeah, the difference would be, I think, for the recreational vehicle park, I think you provide electricity. I think we allow it so that you have to provide a washroom facility, like a communal washroom facility. So there would be water and sewer as far as connection to the actual water service, I'm not sure, but electrical utilities. And then roadways would be the other one. And then for mobile home parks, it would be full connection to all city services.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanting to follow up on this, I believe in my reading of the package, the proposal or the application from the operator of the current RV park is quite brief, and I don't recall mention of park models versus RVs. So depending on the outcome of this vote, if the motion on the table is passed, I'm just wondering if this business owner would have an opportunity to come back with a more detailed application that includes the information regarding park models and those kinds of things. It's just a bit challenging to not have that as part of the package and not have everyone have had a chance to really have that information and process it and reflect on it. So if this motion is passed, I'm just wondering for staff, would this applicant have an opportunity to come back with a more detailed application, including reference and the information regarding park models and how that's different from typical RVs?
Thank you for the question. That's a good question, actually. That's a legislative requirement for council. I believe he'd be able to come back with a new plan and apply once again for whatever he would like to apply for. Yeah, I have to check with legislation if that's what the actual stipulations, but I believe he's allowed to apply again. The another option, I don't know if I can make the recommendation, but some of these issues with people being priced out and wanting to live in tiny homes and recreational vehicles, it just seems to me that it might be an alternative to offer a case-by-case temporary use for people that are going through these, but that's neither here nor there to this application. The question about the legislative requirements, I believe he'd be able to apply again, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question would be, I think that if we approve this to not go forward, I think anybody can change a few things and put the money up and apply again. But in light of some of the information, maybe it would behoove us just to defer this and reach out to the applicant. And if there is, they will provide more information, then we can come back to this. So maybe it's not taking the time to get through the stream, not having to spend another $1,500, and then make that decision if more information becomes present. I'm just wondering if that would satisfy council to reach out. If we get some more information, great. If we don't, it's back here, because it clearly is probably not going to be moving forward this year anyway. We're into September, but at least give it a shot that way if there is more information that could come forward.
So Councilor Graham, are you making a motion to defer? Are you willing to make a motion to?
I'll make a
defer?
motion to defer to the following council meeting of
Okay.
September 23rd.
Seconder? Councilor Popoff, discussion. Councilor Popoff.
Thank you. I support that deferral. Park models are commonly used as permanent residents in southern United States. It's very common in other parts as well. They're designed differently, they're insulated differently, they're probably safer for fire and other things. If that is part of the vision that the owner has, and it's going to be serviced, now we're getting into housing as opposed to going to a community washroom shower. So that to me might be something worth pursuing. And I would encourage the developer, if that's where they're going, to really detail that for us so we can consider it.
Thank you. Councilor Sesky.
I agree, and I support deferring it. And part of the challenge is it's almost like, it's permanent housing, but it's being coded as a RV park, which really is meant to have a different purpose. So I would certainly agree with postponing it till the next council meeting at the earliest, I guess.
Thank you. Further, yeah, I certainly, just based on the conversation, there's too many questions here, I think, for us to make a decision tonight. Certainly, once the term park model come up, I think it certainly changes the whole approach the council would consider on this for sure. No, there's no question, a park model compared to a travel trailer, the resiliency and the build is significantly different. So, yeah, I'm in favor to defer until we get more information from the developer. So I'll call the question. All in favor to defer? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Made that easy. Oh, we're moving into new business here. The first item of new business tonight is from Engineering Development Services Department regarding an active transportation grant application. Can I have Curtis, Mike, and Santana provide an overview?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Connor.
I'll take the lead on this one here, and then we'll bring in other staff as needed. So this report is being brought forward to seek Council's direction on applying for the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program for active transportation on the McPhee Road corridor. What I'd like to do, first of all, is clarify that this application is not being brought forward because this is the highest priority from an active transportation perspective when we're looking at our list of projects. This grant opportunity is being brought forward because it represents the best opportunity to apply for grant funding that would be co-beneficial with us investing in that section of road that is badly in need of resurfacing and some reconstruction work. The road itself is in very poor condition, and it's getting in worse condition with the type of increasing traffic that we're seeing there, both industrial, commercial, and increasing pedestrian usage with the nearby developments and the nearby gym, and a lot of people cycling in the area. This is being brought forward because we have an opportunity to maximize tax dollars on achieving a few of these goals by utilizing this grant, whereas otherwise we're going to be faced with making a decision to do work on that road without the available funding for the active transportation grant. So we're recommending applying for this grant for the primary three reasons that the active transportation project is still identified as a priority through the active transportation plan, and really that highlights the connection to be made between the Rails to Trails, Rotary Way, Moyer Park, including some of the the pedestrian active transportation trails that have been constructed there, and the adjacent residential developments, both current and planned in the Echofield Road, Wildstone, and 30th Avenue. So there is a major corridor for transportation and active transportation, knowing that the city's largest recreation park is further up the site. McPhee Road is a priority 1 road for resurfacing. So this grant would reduce the road reconstruction costs by changing the cross section of the road by over 20%. So without the grant funding, we do need to consider going forward with resurfacing that road. Without doing anything else other than resurfacing the road, the resurfacing cost itself is estimated at $1.2 million. Part of that is because the road is extremely wide. That road and all the other roads in the industrial park were initially designed to have parking lanes on both sides. Due to the nature of that section of road, there's not a lot of accesses on there, and because it's a bit of a primary access road, we don't see any parking on there. And if we were to move forward with this proposed design, we would just enforce and sign the fact that there would be no parking on there, allowing still for there to be significant width for transportation. So right now, like I said, the resurfacing alone for that section, if we were to just use our paving funding, would be $1.2 million. The combined grant funded project would be estimated at $940,000, with those cost savings coming from the grant. This grant is allowing us to leverage funding that we would otherwise have to spend with some of the curb work that needs to be done, and some of the road reconstruction work would be absorbed essentially by the active transportation fund grant, plus a reduction, a narrowing of that road that is wider than it needs to be by essentially reducing parking lanes. And the proposed roads cross section will service current and future development planning and safe vehicle and pedestrian traffic. So we reviewed this a few times through our draft transportation master plan and the OCP. We've done some studies on this transportation corridor through the development of the industrial lands below there. We've also had development study this intersection in this corridor in Wildstone in those areas. So it's been a very well studied section of road. The proposed travel lanes will be wider than those on the recent Cobham road upgrades that we've done that contains a lot of industrial traffic. And in the future, if there is any need to open up those parking lanes or to widen the road, decisions would be made at the next life cycle decision of that entire corridor. The industrial development there was constructed around 1980. So looking at the service life of the underground utilities, we'd have another 30 to 40 years left there. We believe that we certainly have 30 to 40 years left that would be feasible with this updated cross section, and that at that stage that we go and have to dig everything up at its deepest level, that's when we could look at expansion or widening of anything if we did need to for turn lanes or additional lanes. Understanding that any widening of that road surface would definitely impact adjacent existing businesses, expropriation, or large retaining walls. It would be a very, very large undertaking. And yeah, those are the primary reasons, and we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mike. I'll put a motion on the table, and then we'll open up for comment. Can I get a motion that council direct staff to apply to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program for 2024-2025 for the McPhee Road Multi-Use Path Project from Rails to Trails to Wildstone Drive, and an estimated cost of $830,000. Mover, please, Councillor Blissett. Councillor Popoff. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. So just so we're clear, we're still talking about this section basically from Theatre Road, across the railroad tracks, past Rails to Trails, and up to the turnoff to Wildstone, in essence, going up the hill. Is that correct?
You are correct.
So I was by there again today, and there's very clearly white painted lines, and the shoulder, if you want to call it that, the paved shoulder of the road, is somewhere between 2 to 3 meters wide. And I'm wondering whether you couldn't just put cement abutments or something to separate pedestrian and bicycle traffic from the road itself, rather than invest that much money into the project as a whole. I drive up there quite often, and quite frankly, I very, very seldom have seen anybody on the side of that road. And maybe that would do, just cordon it off with some cement abutments and make it safe that way.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, that option was studied by staff through our consulting team. In order to apply for and be eligible for any active transportation grant funding, it does need to meet a minimum standard for safety and width. So there was a consideration of looking at that. The concrete abutments would only be available to be put on one side, as those existing white lines, the shoulder that was left there was meant to provide some safety buffer for potential pedestrian use, but it is in no means meets any standard when it comes to active transportation, cycling, walking. It does not meet any current standard. And if we were to put in the concrete abutments along that entire length and shift the lanes over, at that point in time, when we looked at what the costs would be, it would still end up costing the taxpayers more than the option that we are presenting at this time.
Subsequent, if I might, so you're saying the pavement needs to be replaced anyway, and possibly the sewer, water, whatever line, no, you said they were good for another 20, 30 years, the infrastructure in the ground. Would this also include, because I do think there's potential safety issue where the road turns off to go down to Wildstone, and one of the suggestions was putting in a roundabout there. Is that something that staff have considered to make that intersection safer?
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, the access intersection at Wildstone has been reviewed significantly. Council did approve a budget, I believe, 2 years ago for us to update that intersection, including the concrete islands that are currently in place. That would also allow for future crosswalks in that area if needed, if the land use and the frequency of pedestrian usage were to increase. At that time, other options were looked at, and it was believed that the recent investment and upgrades and safety to that intersection are adequate.
Thank you. Got Councillor Graham, Councillor Blissett, then Councillor Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple questions here, just so everybody's ready. My one question is what's the difference between this report and then what was presented to us a while ago? Was there any changes from when it got voted down or didn't move ahead before?
Councillor Graham, through the mayor. What we've done since that time, that discussion with council and when that previous report was brought forward, the nature of the project itself from a technical perspective, looking at the trail construction and the cross section has not changed significantly. What has changed is clarifying that the cost escalation that we are seeing and the fact that this road resurfacing work does need to occur in that area for these, for the safety improvements and just for the asset management life cycle of that asphalt surface. This is being seen more as staff as an opportunity to optimize road funding such that we would have additional funding left over elsewhere for the community that's badly needed. Whereas that initial report didn't fully cost out the savings that would happen through this project. And it also includes some additional work that we've done looking at the width and the cross section of the road to make sure that for the life cycle of this investment that both the pedestrian traffic and the vehicular traffic would be sustained through the life cycle of the investment, which was a outstanding question that was left at the time that this was brought forward to council.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so, and the concern I had at the time that it was brought up before was the width reduction. And I know that you do allude to Cobham here on width. My only concern was just because it's on a corner, I two semis or two snowplows passing on a straight line is great, but like there's just an awkward corner. So I was concerned about width there. Now I'm not quite as concerned about that now, just seeing a little bit more clarity into it. But what I do have a concern of is I know we had a conversation a while ago around our transportation network and looking at ways that McPhee might actually be the main exit off of an Echo Field development versus running people down to 6th Street Northwest and having to pay for huge upgrades at that intersection there at 7-Eleven versus an upgraded McPhee. Now, if we did that, does this play into that or will that affect that? I know that's high level talk, but it's something that we need to be cognizant of if we're going to look at something different than forcing an Echo Field development down to 6th Street. So is that still possible to utilize McPhee for a lot more traffic versus directing people to 6th Street? Does this limit us in any way?
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, that is a great question. And, you know, since that this was brought to council last, we have worked with the Ministry of Transportation and those adjacent developers in the area to look at what those traffic patterns would look like. And what we have recognized is even though that there are some significant upgrades and improvements that may need to take place on the 6th Street corridor, those improvements are going to need to happen sooner rather than later because we are already nearing a failure point along that corridor. That way, any improvements that would need to happen there would be invested in the relatively near future to accommodate all of this growth. Whereas we have more recently undertaken the upgrades at the CP rail crossing and at the corner down at Home Depot at Theatre Road and McPhee. So those are much more recent investments, and it is a tighter right-of-way in that area. So it doesn't necessarily have the capacity to accommodate future additional traffic that would allow it to channel or divert away from either side of 6th Street or the Echo Field Road intersection. So we are physically limited there. And we do know that there's other growth that's going to be happening that would, in this area and further, you know, in the Wildstone Heights area and further up the 6th Street Northwest corridor that would channel growth towards that 6th Street. So we're looking at understanding that is going to be the best way in the short term and long term to invest in doing that. And the McPhee Road, just the width of it and also the sight lines of it aren't conducive for us to trying to channel more traffic in there to alleviate these investments that would have to happen elsewhere.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Brissette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm grateful that this has come forward again. I voted in favor of it the last time, and I'm going to vote in favor of it again tonight. This is how you grow a bicycling network. And just because people aren't using it right now, it's because it's not safe. So you can't go by the current usage to determine whether you should make improvements, because we need to make improvements. And it may not connect to everything you want it to right now, but as you're improving roads, you put in the bicycle lanes. It makes the most economic sense, and that's how we need to do it. So I am voting in favor. I hope that other councillors who voted against this in the past now will change their minds, and so that we can move forward. We're going to save money by doing this. Just saying.
Councillor Ray, then Councillor Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor Price. I'm very pleased to see this on the agenda this evening. I'd like to thank Fred, Gloria, and Jackie for taking some of their time last week to walk me through the site and educate me on their experience with trying to walk down this road as it currently stands. You know, this is an important and growing residential area, and it's unique in that it needs to coexist with the industrial uses that are in the same area. And we want to make sure that the folks who live in the various developments in the Wildstone area, you know, can safely walk and cycle. We do not want someone to get severely hurt. We do not want someone to get killed because we have not put this kind of, you know, redevelopment of this section of road. We want to make sure folks can walk and cycle safely. I know right now on the road, of course, we just have 2 white lines and we've got 2 white lines on each side. So just a question for staff. So how wide are those current white lines? And a meter and a bit on each side. Is my understanding correct that in the redevelopment, we won't have it on each side? We'll move it all over to one side. So that hopefully will help ease any concerns about width as well. So just wondering if staff could, am I correct in understanding won't be a lane on each side? We're going to move it all over to one side and have like a unified walking, cycling safe trail?
Yes, Council Ray, through the mayor, that is correct. Right now, it happens to be that if you look at the approximate width from white line to white line, that is close, a little bit narrower than what the future, or yeah, the existing one is a little bit narrower than what the future lane width. So if you're looking at those white lines, we would be shifting that center line and those laneways over towards the curb on the high side, facilitating the ability to build a two-way multi-use pathway on the downhill side, or which would be prevailing the northeast side.
Thanks very much. And just a quick follow-up, if I may. I think that's excellent because we know from Rails to Trails, for example, or Rotary Way, you know, I think cyclists and pedestrians are very good about managing the 2 lanes on a multi-use trail. So I think that will be an excellent approach. And I'm really pleased with the synergy and cost savings that are encompassed in this revised project. And I believe it brings very good value for the community. So I look forward to voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, you know, since the last time, we now have a grant funding application, which I don't think we had on the table before. So I think that's positive, and we're looking at how we can actually save some money if we get the grant application versus it being out of taxpayer money to do it the first time. The proposed active transportation route that you're identifying, we have a transportation safety team that's looked at this proposal from the active transportation route. Is it considered safe in terms of the steep terrain sections, as well as it being compatible with commercial traffic and maybe more commercial traffic going up and down that hill?
Councillor Popoff, through the mayor, yes, this has been reviewed in depth in the lens of not only our active transportation plan, but the fairly rigorous requirements of the province's active transportation standard, and that does take into account the type of traffic here. So, you know, we listened really well when council talked about, you know, the difficulty in implementing active transportation projects with the budget challenges, as the money does typically come out of the same money that we need to put money in for roads and resurfacing and streetlights and sidewalks. So that's why we're really looking at this as a good opportunity for implementation. But what we're really strategizing is how can we implement active transportation when we're combining it with existing capital projects for cost savings, or we're combining with development projects for cost savings, or we're looking at other partnerships until we can find a better dedicated funding resource for these types of investments.
Thank you. And just supplementary, if I may. You mentioned that this is one of our top priorities for active transportation, so that's good that it made the top of the list. So if we do support this motion, it looks like we're going to, we don't want the paving project of the road development to be delayed while waiting for knowing yes or no for the grant application. So how do you see the timing of that work, Mike? We need to go and get our proposals and everything in for the road, I understand probably for 2025, and get those in as soon as possible to get the lowest price while we're waiting on the grant funding. Are those going to be working simultaneously, or are we going to have to wait for the grant funding before we do this?
Councillor Popoff, through the mayor, the way that we've spent enough time on this project, and we do have, you know, considerably close to construction ready design, such that our ability to if we're in, this is all budget dependent when it comes down to what a paving program may look like next year as far as the, dedicated tax and funding perspectives. But if this is bundled in with a larger paving program or capital works project, we do certainly have the flexibility within procurement laws and standards to have something like this as optional work. So we can always tender a portion of our works as optional to secure good prices, and then it's subject to funding. And if we don't get it, it just doesn't happen and the money goes elsewhere. So we can leverage the funding and tender projects, a portion of work as optional, and then just work with a successful contractor to utilize that funding if we are successful.
Thank you. So some of my good friends up in Wildstone have been obviously compelling me to vote in favor of this, because they're saying we're going to ride our bikes all the way down to the superstore in Walmart, load up with groceries, and then ride, not e-bike, but ride our bike all the way back up the hill back to Wildstone. So I'm going to vote in favor of this, Mr. Mayor, because I want to see my good friends from Wildstone ride their bike loaded down with groceries all the way back up to Wildstone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Statsky.
I just wonder if you could clarify something, because is the total cost of the project is $1,200,000, but correct? And then on the motion we're voting at, you got an estimated cost of $830,000, which would suggest the grant would be $370,000. But in number 2 under background information, so the project is estimated at $1,200,000 compared to the combined grant funded project at $940,000, which would mean we're looking at a $260,000 grant. So could you just clarify the numbers for me, please?
Councillor Statsky, the mayor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer to Curtis Mummery. He's been working on this. Part of that, the rationale behind that is that the $1.2 million is just for us to resurface it. The grant funding project has a certain funding available, but the grant funded project needs to stack on top of our regular funding. So I'll let Curtis speak to that, because I did ask him that exact same question about 45 minutes ago, so he should be prepared.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the Councillor Statsky through the mayor. So the cost of the work to upgrade for that would be encompassed in the active transportation grant is worth $830,000, which 60% would be covered by the grant and approximately 40% covered by the city. If we are to go in and just resurface that road with no improvements, nothing with the active transportation, it's $1.2 million. So when you combine our contribution to the grant funding plus the remainder to finish the resurfacing, we end up with the city contribution of $940,000, which still saves the city money from significantly less than if we were just to resurface the whole street without completing any upgrades. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, does it mean that number 1 that we're voting on should be 940 rather than 830? 830,000, 940?
No, the 830 is just specific to that grant program. So the grant program and the grant funded project is a portion of the larger project that involves a little bit of extra resurfacing work that we have to contribute to.
Everybody good? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion that council direct staff to include this project in the 2025 Capital Roads Program, pending approval of the grant, and fund the city's 40% share of the estimated project costs using the Capital Roads Program funds? Move it, please. Councillor Popoff. Councillor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. It was easy. The next item of new business is also from Engineering Development Services Department regarding the development variance permit parking variance at 125 and 127 Fifth Avenue South. Can I please have Santana provide an overview of this report?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, so we've received an application to vary the minimum off-street parking requirements for 125 and 127 Fifth Avenue South. The subject property is less than 800 meters from our downtown park or bus exchange. And it's just about a block off of the main downtown core periphery. The applicant has requested to vary the minimum requirements from 2 parking stalls per unit to 1.5 parking stalls per unit. This variance would facilitate the development of 2 fourplex buildings on these lots, which would result in 6 stalls as opposed to 8, which is what's required in the zoning bylaw right now. In general, staff are supportive of this variance, one based on past precedents of other larger density examples where we've allowed 1.5 stalls that are further from amenities and have greater, fewer and serviced by fewer transit routes. This property is on 3 of the major bus routes. Further, when we asked the applicant about, how we would manage the additional parking or, vehicles on site and whatnot, the applicant indicated that they would either, through tenant selection, they will be prioritizing applicants that have fewer vehicles, and they're considering imposing parking fees to try and limit the amount of vehicles on the site. In the adjacent area to the proposed development site, there is 2 fourplexes right across the street, and then it is a single-family residential to the south, and then there's some highway commercial to the north. So for those reasons, staff are in support. We understand that there's maybe concern to the off-street or what the on-street parking capacity might look like right now. I just want to remind or reiterate that on-street parking, no property is entitled to the on-street parking, and they should each have their own stalls assigned to them at buildings. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to respond.
I'll get a motion here. Can I get a motion that council approved development variance permit 3090.20.2405 to vary section 6.12.4A of the zoning bylaw 3977 2019 to vary the minimum off-street parking requirements from 2 stalls per unit to 1.5 stalls per unit for properties legally described as Lot 15 and Lot 16, Block 34, District Lot 5, Kootenai District Plan 6-9. Mover, please. Councilor Bissett, Councilor Popoff. Discussion. Councilor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. So if we stuck with the 2 stalls per housing unit, does that mean that potentially they would only be able to get 6 housing units on that site rather than 8? Just looking from a straight math perspective.
Through the mayor to Councilor Stetsky, it would require the applicant to reconfigure the whole site, likely that there wouldn't be room, or they'd have to reconfigure, I guess, and redesign their site. They could possibly go higher, but then that still might require a zoning variance to allow the building height or to vary the building height. So that hasn't been proposed yet or explored yet.
Okay. Councilor Popoff.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So this comes up all the time from 2 down to 1.5. And frankly, the reality is, I think in most communities and in most neighborhoods, 1.5 or 2, if people are going to park on the street, they're going to park on the street. You could have more parking designated as in off-street, but they're still going to park on the street if they want to. So I support this request, and it's up to the residents, it's up to the neighbors of how much they're going to park on the street versus how much parking they might have on their own properties.
Thank you. Certainly, this is the kind of infill housing that the city certainly supports. I appreciate that there's a few situations we have got feedback from some of the residents. Certainly a couple of them, somebody with disabilities, et cetera, somebody limits their ability to park in front of their residence where they don't have off-street parking. Some of those existing residents don't have off-street parking, so I understand that. We've got a number of areas in town where we've permitted certain streets for resident parking only, and I'm just wondering if this is going to be a concern here, that we couldn't have a section of those streets where we do have people with serious concerns, have a permitted area where it is limited to the residents. Is that possible, Mike?
Mayor Price, we do have those, potential tools available to us in the bylaw. I think what we're looking at here, especially through the provincial legislation, this type of housing is something, and when it comes to the density, is we don't have the option. And then alternatively, if we're looking at requiring more parking stalls on site, what it does is it does limit a little bit of the on-street use. In these situations, looking at having 4 parking stalls along the width of each one of those lots, we would essentially have no space between the parking stalls of one property and the next and the next. And that does allow for 0 snow storage on the curbs, and it would actually allow for no locations for garbage bins to be placed. So it does cause a little bit of that concern, but it is certainly something that we talk about. We talk about what the best practices are for monitoring these things, and we certainly do have the ability for more proactive bylaw enforcement and education, as we have heard these concerns when it comes to garbage bins and snow storage and those types of items. And then there's ability for the city to be proactive and work in these neighborhoods to see how things are working once these decisions are made.
Thanks, Mike. I've got Councillor Ray, then Councillor Brissette.
Thanks, Mayor Price. I think this development would be really positive for our community. It's great to see that it's come forward. And, I think the 1.5 stalls is manageable. And I think it's becoming, a more accepted expectation. So I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. The BC Housing building on 2nd Street South and Victoria Ave, I believe had a parking variance, and that parking lot is often half full. Probably the most full I've seen it is 2/3. So I really think the 1.5 stalls can work. And it's also, as people shift their expectations around trying to use different modes of transportation other than their car or their truck. So I'm in support of that. And as was just alluded to, in terms of some of the feedback from residents in the area, if staff have an opportunity to reach out for some folks it sounds like are struggling with their bins and whatnot, if staff have an opportunity to reach out and see if they can, provide any support or suggestions, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Brissette. I lost my track here.
It's okay. Thank you, Your Worship. So there are also alleys with these streets. And I live one street over, and one of the things that happens on our street is most people park on the road instead of in the alleyway, even when they have parking behind, because people just want to walk in. But certainly people can be encouraged to use the parking that is available from the alleys. Plus, some of the concerns in the letters that I read was from the parking that's been created by the businesses that are on the highway. And there, I think there's parking behind that vet clinic, but I don't think people use it. And that needs to be something that could happen. Because that would help relieve some of the congestion on that street. So I think there are solutions with the businesses that are on there to try to even put up signs to say parking in the rear so that people park there, or with the other mall, like to park on site, because there are parking spaces there. So I think there's solutions for the parking issue. And yeah, I saw those lots for sale a year ago when they're up, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be perfect for a fourplex. It's a great location. You can walk downtown, and I mean, we've gone to one vehicle because we walk downtown all the time and ride bikes, because we're also the benefit of being on the flat part of Cranbrook, which is very nice. So I do think this is okay to adjust the parking requirement, and I think there are solutions that can be worked out through the neighborhood.
Further? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And moving on now to administrative updates. There are 4 admin updates this evening. The first are from Engineering Development Services. Can I please ask Curtis to provide the update for the intersection of 14th Avenue North and 2nd Street North and an updated capital works program?
Okay. Mayor Price, I will provide the initial update here on the intersection of 14th Avenue North and 2nd Street North. Over the summer, the electrical controller at this intersection failed. It's failed multiple times, and the amount of staff time and effort putting on keeping this thing working was significant. So at that point in time, we decided to undertake a review of this intersection to determine what upgrades or replacements would need to happen, knowing that those lights have met the end of their lifespan, and whether there was any improvements or optimization that could be made. In the meantime, we threw some bags over the lights and put some stop signs on there, and we had that as a pocket-ready solution, knowing that replacing what was there may not be in the best interests. Based on the study that was undertaken, it has been determined that a permanent 4-way stop will operate effectively for at least the next 15 years. And what we're looking at doing is hiring a contractor to convert that intersection that is now a temporary 4-way stop to a permanent 4-way stop using existing budget that we do have in place. By not installing and replacing this signalized system, based on the recent cost estimates, we would save the city approximately $850,000. In order to, facilitate the installation of the 4-way stop, we do have some basic standards that do need to be met from a TAC perspective, and these are just engineering standards and safety standards with the line painting and the marking. The conceptual plan is shown on there. And that's very much reflective of what we're going to be looking at doing. So we're hoping that we can move forward with this, as the current temporary use is not something that's easy to maintain and navigate around in the winter. But as we've seen and as we've heard and observed, it is functioning quite well. And this is one of those situations where the simpler solution is actually the safer solution, and it is the most cost-effective solution.
Thank you, Mike. Council, comments, questions? No, all good. Thanks, Mike.
And then Curtis,
Curtis?
you want to speak to the capital works?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thought this was a good time after the bit of the break over the summer to bring everyone an update of where we're at. The first project on the list to update, the Lagoons Phase 3. So that project is moving along quite well with our contractor Copcan Civil down there. They've completed all of the in-stream works, which was hingent on the fisheries window. So that was awesome. That was kind of the time crunch part of the project, and they've since then, started working on a lot of the berm reconstruction. Being out there today, they're about 2/3 of the way through reconstruction of the berm on cell 2, which is awesome. So they're moving along quite well down there, and we're happy with the progress. So by the end of the fall this year, both cell 2 and 3 berms will be reconstructed on the creek side. The berms will be moved away from the creek and have been armored to protect and prevent any kind of future erosion. So that's some good news. And then we'll have completed the terms of our grant that we got for the pipeline and the lagoons. Our 12th Avenue South reconstruction project, all the deep utilities are complete. The curb and gutter has been installed along with the sidewalk. They're going to be finishing working on grading here this week and paving, with the landscaping to follow right shortly after. So that project will be wrapped up in the next couple weeks. And then following that, the 6th Street South project, all of the deep utilities are now complete as well. And the contractor has started working on construction of the road, with curbing, paving, and landscaping to happen by the end of September. So everything's moving along good, and we're happy with the progress.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Council, everybody's good? Good stuff. Thank you, Curtis. Mike. Next up is Public Works. Caitlin, to provide an update on the 2024 Water Smart Ambassador Program and the e-scooter pilot program. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hello. So this is the update for the Water Ambassador Program. So we had Tanya Nadeau here as our Water Ambassador for 2024. And through her 4-month term, she attended 25 classrooms in 7 different schools doing our elementary education program. After that program finished, she did irrigation assessments at 17 households, as well as did a lot of monitoring to educate residents on our water restriction stages. To help educate residents, she also attended 6 community events, and then also did a presentation for the Kids Club for the summertime. She worked really closely with our bylaw department this year, and she was able to reach out to a lot of residents that bylaw had contacted, just to provide them with information and then follow up with her monitoring. And I've attached her annual report for information.
Thanks, Caitlin. And thank you to the ambassador. Great work. Again, thank you to the citizens of Cranbrook this year. You know, everybody's aware that, you know, we made the call to the public to curb water use and to be proactive, and we came through very, very well. I'm hoping to get a report next meeting from our Public Works, from our Public Works water staff, and I think we'll find that we came through quite well, considering what we were faced with early in the year. So thank you all very much. Now moving on to correspondence. We have 6 pieces of correspondence on the agenda tonight. One is an outgoing letter from the city to the regional districts, which is on the agenda for information. The others are for information, for potential discussion. Is there any item council would like to discuss? Oh, missed one.
Before we lose Caitlin, we just wanted to make sure we capture the e-scooter.
Pardon me?
Update. Said before we lose Caitlin, we just want to capture the e-scooter update we missed. Okay. Caitlin, you still there?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Caitlin. I missed that. My bad. Now we cut you off.
We had an update with Bird Canada on the e-scooter program. So the program's been very successful since we've started, and we've had an above average use compared to other municipalities in their first year. We find that residents usually use the e-scooters between 2 and 10 p.m. And based on where people are riding them and where they're starting and ending, we are finding that a lot of the trips that they are using the e-scooters for could have been used with a car. So we're seeing that transition to use it more as a commuter vehicle. And we have approximately 17% of the riders registered for using those e-scooters have used them more than 50 times, which is really great to see. injuries and complaints are self-reported, and we haven't seen anything reported to Bird, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been any injuries. And we'll be working with Bird over the next couple of months just to finalize everything before the snow falls and get the program geared up for 2025.
Thanks, Caitlin. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Caitlin, a number of complaints and a number of visuals from me driving around town in my pickup truck, unfortunately, where these scooters are parked literally across the sidewalk. So you can't walk on the sidewalk, let alone a wheelchair or other devices like that. So how can we, in conjunction with the owners of the company, get the message across to properly park your e-scooters and not block sidewalks?
Yeah, we can work with Bird just to work more on communication with residents. They are required to take a photo when they do park the e-scooter. So people might be taking it at different angles to show that it isn't on a sidewalk. And if any residents see that a scooter is parked within a sidewalk or obstructing anything, they are encouraged to take a photo and either send it to us or send it to Bird. Sending it to Bird would be the quickest response, and then they can address it and move the scooter right away.
Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. And if we could also encourage Bird to communicate well with their patrons to not ride them on sidewalks. I was walking out of a store on Main Street, and it's one of those ones where the door is recessed. And fortunately, I was just about hit by a large fellow riding at warp speed down the sidewalk. And honestly, that would have been a life changer. If not, it would have been quite significant, an accident for me. And they are dangerous on sidewalks, and we have to keep them off there. And that particularly where people are exiting from stores out onto the sidewalk. And I know, you know, and this fellow just kept going and you know, I know he knew, but the thing is that it was too late. So it's just dangerous for that. I mean, walking around a scooter is not a big deal. Getting hit by one at full speed with a rider on it, that's a gigantic deal. And no, that wasn't reported to Bird, but we really have to do something to try to encourage that so that they're on the roads, not on the sidewalks.
Councillor Tetsky.
The other issue, and I'm sure you're aware of it, is the lack of helmets wearing by probably 90% of the people that I saw on scooters over the course of the summer. So Green may have dealt with this in other communities. Maybe we can do something through the schools to encourage kids, talk about safety. And there is a bylaw as well. I think, well, there's a bylaw for bicycles. I assume you're supposed to wear a helmet when you're on a scooter as well. But it is something that needs to be addressed. I worry, quite frankly, for the kids that are on those scooters and they're not wearing helmets, and that's the majority of them.
Thank you. Further? Thank you very much, Kate, and sorry about that earlier. I'm kind of coming off summer here, so, yeah. Okay, moving on to correspondence. So we have 6 pieces of correspondence. The letter to the RDK, which is in the information package. Anything in the package council members like to discuss? Councillor Popoff?
Yes, item 12.6, JCI is asking us to donate our theater usage, so I would support that.
Okay, I'll put a motion on the floor if that's fine then. The council received the correspondence from the JCI Kootenay regarding the All Citizens Forum October 7th, 2024, and further direct staff to utilize the city's free day at the Key City Theatre to host all candidates forum on Monday, October 7th, 2024. Mover by Councillor Popoff, seconder by Councillor Bissett. Discussion, all in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Further?
12.3, Habitat for Humanity. I think it's really important that we support their initiative. We did have one Habitat for Humanity house built in about 2013, 2014. I know because I helped paint it. It's a great initiative and we should do everything we can to support them coming back to Cranbrook.
Yeah, good point. Further? No? Good. That brings us to mayor and councilors' reports and inquiries. Let's start with Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a ton to report. It's been a busy summer, but the one thing I wanted to just kind of draw council's eyes and attention to is that the UBCM just released a paper on responsible conduct for councils and regional districts. And we have a code of conduct that we sign off on, which is great, and that shows how progressive we are. There is over 30% of the municipalities in the province do not. So, and as we see throughout the province and a few communities, that there are some significant issues around the council and board tables. So it's definitely something that we're working on and just hoping to get some input at the UBCM coming up on how we navigate this, especially with elected officials. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just maybe just a comment on that, certainly when this council came together, it was the first year we were looking at the week-long orientation. So the CEO recognized, an opportunity for council to undergo, it's actually was very intensive, a full week of orientation. Oftentimes in the past, you've seen your 2-hour session or something, right? And a lot of these, certainly the documents, that lays out our responsibilities, the CEO's responsibilities. These issues happen when the responsibilities of all parties aren't laid out at the start. And I think with our administration and council, we've done an extremely good job of that, of not just highlighting the expectations, but putting them down in a formal document and signing them off. And that's made, I think, a significant difference. Councillor Papa.
Yes, thanks, Humor. So since we convened in middle of July through to now, it's been as we all can attest to, a hectic summer. Lots of events and activities happening in around Cranbrook, Rock the Kootenays, and then just recently both the Grand Fondo and the EdFest, and more to speak about. So, and residents and visitors from all across. When I was working the Fondo on Saturday, as they're riding through the finish line, they're announced their name and where they're from. There were more people from outside of our Cranbrook-Kimberley Regional District area attending the Grand Fondo than there were inside. So that's a test to the success and also how well known Cranbrook is positioning themselves with visitation. So that's a big success, and just looking forward to more of it. And of course, EdFest was two days this week, and again, it's catching on. So let's keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bassett.
Oh, thank you. I have a few things. So I had Kisa reached out to me regarding the storage facility up at Moore Park. They've used it for their equipment for pylons and all this stuff. And but I'm not sure what's happening with the city. So if staff could get back to us about that. I know it's very important to the groups that use it to keep it. And it's very expensive for them to try to replace it. So if we could find out more about that, that would be great. Okay, thank you. I'd also like to say that there was a number of awards given out in the last week. The King Charles award, I don't know the verbiage on it, but it was given out at Regional District and from our federal MP and also from our MLA. But I also just wanted to say thank you to all of the people who work with our homeless population, because that is such tough work, and it's emotionally draining and it's just hard. And I really want to say thank you to those people, because I know, a number of us none of us are happy to see people living on the streets and in out of housing. But my hat goes off to the people who are working to try to help these people. This is not glamorous work, and I'm very appreciative that somebody does it. And also to our emergency service workers who deal with people on overdose and in crisis. Again, tough, emotionally tough work. And I appreciate that somebody else is doing it because I don't want to do it. And I appreciate that they do. So I just wanted to say thank you to those people. I'd also like to say that, you know, we're halfway through our term. And in 2 years' time, there will be a municipal election. And there's a number of people who have a lot of strong opinions on how things should be done municipally. And some of those people should think about running. And it's, you know, this is a form of government that impacts your life and is not, you know, like you don't have to leave town to do this job. And so people should really think about that and about watching council meetings and coming to them and thinking about whether or not they want to run next time. Because we need good people to run for municipal office. And also, I didn't know this until, you know, flipping through social media today. It's International EV Day. And my partner and I, we drove across the country with our electric vehicle. And I've done it twice now. And so this year, what I would say the difference is we were better at it. We had the right app on our phone. PlugShare is really helpful to tell you what chargers are working and what don't. We also have had more experience with this. I would say there's more EVs on the road, but there's not a lot more charging infrastructure. And in some places that is an issue. I mean, we were fine. It's definitely easier going from west to east because you've got the wind behind you, as opposed to going from east to west against the headwinds. Planes find that too. There's a time difference in flying across the country. But anyways, worked out fine. And certainly as far as costs go, you're looking at about a third of the price of gas. So anyway, something to think about.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Price. You're just keeping me on my toes there in terms of order. See if I'm paying attention. Very good. To echo some other comments around the table, amazing events here in Akiska this summer. Rock the Kootenays, ton of fun. People had a great time. Awesome as well to see everybody, the folks who were volunteering with that event. I'd like to say thank you to Fisher Peak Performing Artists Society for once again, their amazing Summer Sound series. It's just a great way to add vibrancy to our downtown and great crowds, wonderful to see. And then this weekend, of course, EdFest downtown, huge thank you to Key City Theatre for leading that new tradition in Cranbrook. And it was a pleasure for me to speak on behalf of Mayor and Council at that event. And then, of course, the Kootenay Rockies Grand Fondo, led by Cranbrook Sunrise Rotary and supported by numerous other service clubs in Cranbrook and in Kimberley, as well as the Fondo Force, the great volunteer team. And, you know, wonderful ride. They had beautiful weather and also significant economic spin-offs from that event, welcoming a whole bunch of bike riders and their spouses and families to our area to enjoy and hopefully come back again. So lots of great stuff to celebrate here in Cranbrook.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A few things. First of all, I'd like to just echo the thanks and appreciation that several of my colleagues have given for a wonderful summer. If you're bored in Cranbrook in the summer, you're not looking around and seeing what's available. There's lots to do in Cranbrook throughout the summer. Really appreciate the effort put into that. And as Councillor Bissett said, really appreciate the people working with our homeless population in very difficult circumstances. Couple of things in addition. Knights Hall, of course, school has started. Students are walking past the former Knights Hall pile of trash, and I just appreciate an update if we could, CAO Purchell, on where things are at with getting rid of the piles.
Okay, so Mayor Price, through to Councillor Stetsky, just, council did issue the remediation order for the cleanup of the site, which then compels the owner to do that cleanup. Those timelines have passed, but there's a number of steps to be taken legally, and so we've been working with our legal support on that and some other issues on the site. So I've asked Paul if he can give an update of where we're at and what's coming next for council. So just be aware, lots going on. Not a lot we can say publicly because it does involve our lawyers. So Paul, if you don't mind, please, thank you.
But we're resolute in our determination to see them gone as soon as possible.
Okay, Your Worship, through to Councillor Stetsky. Yeah, we've had quite a few discussions with the owner and family members of the owner. And we have been pushing for the site to be cleaned up properly and thoroughly. The owner has seen all of the reports about what has to be done to clean up the site properly, not just Knights Hall. And then now we've also started consulting with tax specialists and with our legal counsel to consider the next steps coming forward. And we'll be doing that at the next council meeting in terms of assessing our risks and different means that we can take to address the issue of, one, securing the site in terms of safety and reducing the friable substances that can become airborne. And then two, the overall problem of just cleaning up the site, the entire site.
Okay, thank you. Two other quick things. I wonder if we shouldn't, just as a city, and have staff bring forward whatever it takes to permanently change our parking requirements to 1.5 stalls or spaces per unit as a minimum rather than 2, so we don't have to deal with the issue. I think it makes a lot of sense to move to 1.5 permanently and have that as our standard. Then we don't have to deal with variance requests or whatever.
So I'll just say that, you know, in terms of densification and best practices out there, what we're working on actually is a policy level statement to follow, like, process within local government through the OCP of the change that then would flow into the actual parking portion of the zoning bylaws. And right now, that's where we're at, but we anticipate we're going to be requesting a change in that regard to council. Best practices in a lot of the major centers is no minimums. They've gone to 0. And then it's up to the development to decide. And so Edmonton, Calgary, I heard Spokane, like recently, like a lot of the big centers have gone that way. So we'll be looking at that through the OCP with policy level statements first that then impact the actual bylaws.
Thank you. And lastly, I just want to kind of go back to where Councillor Graham started. And, you know, one of the things that makes a group work that we have in this group is respect. And one of the things I've certainly learned we come from a lot of different backgrounds around the table. But one of the things that I learned long ago is that, you know, you learn and you grow by hearing someone's opinions that are different from yours. If you're just hanging around and dealing with people that think exactly the same as you, you will not grow. So I appreciate the respect that we see around the table and the differences of opinions that get brought forward in a respectful way.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're at the end of the meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett, all in favor?